Welcome to Clever Orbits. I was waiting to see how long it would take until you supplied the third welcome. Today we're discussing, I believe it's the note from a song, right? Oh no, it's a point of light.
From a song? A point of light. Like, you remember George H.W. Bush had a Points of Light program that he tried to initiate when he started his presidency? That's what this is about.
Really?
Well, George H.W. Bush did have that program, and apparently it extended into the 23rd century.
Huh. Well, yeah, so this episode was great. I loved it.
I liked a lot of things about it. I had a lot of fun. And something I really appreciated about it was the fact that Spock killed 3 doctors.
Yeah, Richard, I'm pretty sure that didn't happen.
You think he's been framed?
I think he's been framed. In fact, I think he's been framed by Section 31.
Oh.
Yeah. In fact, I was so inspired by this. I don't have an opening salvo. I do have a gloss and a couple quotes that this episode made me think of. But you go first. So you thought it was good?
Oh, yeah. I was proceeding from the assumption that Spock really did have some kind of psychotic break.
Oh. Well,
it didn't seem so implausible to me.
I don't know why you thought that.
I mean, look, so psychopathy means you have no empathy, which means, and one aspect of that is being hyperlogical. The thing about Spock that drives women crazy is, does he actually have emotions?
So you read that article that you sent me on Spock and feminism?
I actually didn't, but I was just deriving that from other knowledge.
It was called Star Trek and Sexuality, and it was all about feminism.
I mean, in general, women seem to be attracted to violent psychopaths. Look, Charles Manson got married from prison.
I need to sit with that for a second. That's actually really disturbing. However, people are crazy, so that's a thing. This episode reminded me of 2 things. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That, of course, is William Blake. And
nice.
This is the most perfect episode produced of Discovery to date. 10 out of 10. I'm calling it now. The richness of the characterization, the plotting, the depth, and skillful use of the available plot elements within a continuing overarching narrative, and the delivery of something that only Discovery can deliver, which we should talk to that, because that pigeonholing or getting clear on what that actually is interesting. And then we also had a touch on the weirdness of Star Trek. Now, again, I didn't really examine it for philosophy. I'm sure there's interdramatic philosophy to be found here. But the pacing and the action sequence, and Richard, I think you're probably aligned with me. The biggest thing to be proud of and to be pleased with in this episode is the floating murder bot at the end that dissolves all those Klingons, right?
That was pretty cool.
It really did glorify Section 31. I'm actually realizing how much I actually appreciated Section 31 at the end.
Yeah.
I'm actually, in retrospect, a little bit disturbed how excited I was about that just now.
Yeah? Do you feel like you're starting to get enlisted into some kind of militarist project?
Possibly.
Some kind of Federation ultranationalism?
Oh, man. So, no, I don't think it's ultranationalism. I just thought it was a cool action sequence. Like, the Klingons were always this violent. That's what I like to believe. They were always this violent.
Yeah, and they want to be that violent.
Well, yeah, they want to be. And it took 55 years plus since they were introduced in the original series, even though the original series they hadn't really formed in this way yet. But this is the first time we see the Klingons truly being real Klingons, like being brutal. And it aligns with all the intrigue and the political scheming that we saw in Deep Space Nine and The Next Generation. But it's got a new spin on it. And my God, the severed baby head.
Yeah, that was quite a thing. Notice they didn't show that in a sustained way. They just gave us a little glimpse.
So it wouldn't haunt our dreams.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to show us, but they didn't want to show us too much, so they're like, okay, we're going to show it for like half a second.
You show us just enough. Just enough.
Do you think those were real heads, though?
Yeah, they mentioned, somebody mentioned it was either like Ash or whoever at the end, how it was genetically like modified, like they grew those heads.
Oh, in the axolotl tanks.
Something like that, like grown, genetic, modified. Now the thing that throws everybody for a loop is the fact that the listening device was in the paint. Did you know that?
No.
The paint on his hand that he couldn't get off. It was It was a listening device. I had to watch that twice and then listen to a commentary about the Penske File guys, even to know that was what was going on. And when I found out, it was like, well, wait, what?
That's pretty cool. Liquid machines.
Yeah. Oh, well, that then becomes much cooler. Yes. This is the most. So I want to talk to Section 31. So this is so cool. I've never seen this happen before. Maybe very briefly in, well, no, actually, I've never seen this happen before, where you have canon and then you have somebody who writes a book about canon, or it's like, beta canon, or whatever you want to call it. And then alpha canon, the actual show, comes back and affirms what went on in the book. And then that book becomes canon to the extent that it does. And so there's a book set after Deep Space Nine with Julian Bashir called Star Trek Section 31, Control. And in that book, we find out that the origins of Section 31 lay in this computer program, this artificial superintelligence, whose sole purpose is the protection of the Federation. And it's a program that's always looking for what could go wrong, and it assembles this vast network and this team of intelligence gathering and espionage agents who are fighting for ostensibly the highest good of the Federation. And so for 250 years, since the founding of the Federation, nobody actually knows that Section 31 is itself run by this artificial superintelligence. And in the book, Bashir discovers this, and he fights it, and I won't spoil what happens at the end. It's really good, but the artificial superintelligence is referred to as Control. And in a very short throwaway line at the end of the episode, guy whose name we don't know yet talks to Georgiou and says, yeah, Control thinks that Tyler has valuable skills. And I was like, holy shit, everything just changed. The whole Star Trek universe. Because, Control is continuously manipulating people into positions of power and puppeteering behind the scenes to make everything work in Star Trek. And so, there's this great shadow that was just cast over, 300 years of Star Trek history now, where this thing has been in play. And, we need further verification probably from the text that that's what they meant by Control. But Kristen Meyer is a writer from the post-TNG, post-Nemesis era in the novels. So assuredly, in being one of the executive story editors, assuredly she knew about that, at least in writing this script, like what she was referencing. So anyway, it was very subtle, but I really appreciated it. I was wrapped through the whole thing. I had no question, no concern, no experience of what? Except that race. I'm pretty sure what happened is Tilly had that conversation with May in her head in about 5 seconds when she got slowed down during the race. I don't think she actually stopped in the hallway the way that we saw, because otherwise she could not have run the race. She could not have run it or won it in the way that she did.
Temporal distortions are a characteristic of psychotic breaks.
Yeah. So she had an accelerated experience. Except, what the fuck is going on with that tiny water bottle? It's got nothing in it. Did you see that?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it was a tiny water bottle. So, and then just to hit on the moments of compassion, Burnham appreciating Voq or Tyler, whatever. She says, "You got me right now." And then I'm going to go really authentic here for a second. You know, if I had a son, it would definitely change me, and it would open me to more compassion. And I think that's what happened for Ash. And you got this brilliant expression of a unique kind of love where he can't love her because of the trauma. And then he realizes they have this baby together, and he's like, yes, actually, I can grow to love you, basically, because we have this child together. And, you know, it brought up memories for me because I had a child, and I wish I had given that child up for adoption because that child would still be around. However, that's my computer agreeing with me, apparently. And, yeah, instead the pregnancy was terminated. So, like, I see in Voq the arising and the awakening of something that could have been there in me. And so I had real compassion for him in that, because really, you know, there's physiological changes that take place in the brains of men and women when a child is had. So I mean, yeah, I think that's a unique observation that like having children is the access to greater compassion for other people generally, potentially. At least that's something that probably behavioral neuropsychologists should verify before I state it as truth. But, yeah.
No, I think it's quite clear that once people have children, it changes the way they approach life. And the reason it changes the way they approach life is it gives them more future orientation because now they are invested in the future and the long term in a way that you're not when you don't have a creature which sprang forth from your body, which is alive in the world. Like, before you have a child, you're, like, intellectually like, okay, yeah, I care about the future and after I die and whatever. After you have a child, you physiologically care about what happens after you die because it's your child.
It's a switch flip. It's a context shift. It's a profound instinctual reversion to a certain type of being.
And because you are focusing on the long term more, that means you're going to be more cooperative, more empathetic. I mean, when you're focusing on the short term, the best strategy in the short term is, in fact, to be a violent psychopath and fight your way to the top. In the short term, if you want to. Right? Oh,
that's interesting. So
if you're trying
this episode then is about Section 31 versus parenthood. I mean, it's not that Section 31 is directly against parenthood, but it's the contrast that's drawn between vicious, self-centered, short-term, lacking in compassion for doing whatever it takes to make survival happen versus an expanded sense of who we are in the world, which Ash Tyler takes on. And actually, Ash Tyler embodies. Ash Tyler has chosen to honor the opportunity to be responsible for the Klingon race while his heart might still be with Burnham and the humans. And now, by the end of the episode, his arc is to have opened himself rather than, as most people do when they find out their partner who was not their girlfriend is pregnant, they turn tail and run, right? But with Ash Tyler, he welcomes the heightened responsibility and capacity for empathy and the expanded sphere of concern that he inhabits. And I think that's the profound lesson here. I was looking for something, Richard, and what you said actually threw it out. So I appreciate it.
No, I think that's a very interesting thing to focus on. And I really feel like this emotional complexity that Ash Tyler is going through that's some hard-hitting stuff. It's basically, emotionally, it's like he's dealing with a child of rape. That's like one of the hardest-hitting emotional quandaries you could ever have. And kudos to the writers for taking that on.
And kudos to the writers for making sure that the blood looked just like Pepto-Bismol when it came out of the Klingon's body.
Of course.
I mean, we established in Star Trek VI that that's what Klingon blood looks like. So
there's one thing I want to talk about. Logic extremists.
Did you come up with a name?
There are references in this episode to logic extremists on Vulcan, and I really like that. I think that's cool. I want to be a logic extremist. I think
this is terrifying.
I would be a logic extremist. And, so there's two interpretations of how we ended up with this concept of logic extremists in Star Trek Discovery. Interpretation number one is the writers were like, well, what are the Vulcans all about? Logic. So if they have extremists, they must be logic extremists. And so that's interpretation number one. Number two, no, actually it makes a lot of sense because we've seen that for the Vulcans, logic does not preclude violence. Remember the Vulcan hello? That's what started off Discovery. The Vulcan hello.
And the Vulcans all throughout Enterprise, too.
Yeah. This idea that logic precludes violence, that's just nonsense. Logic could easily lead to extremism. And so in pursuit of this concept, I came up with some different names for logic extremist groups or some, like, things for them to say. So, like,
will you regale us?
If P, then Q, motherfuckers. If not Q, then you're dead, motherfuckers. And we're living in a universe where we might hear this on Star Trek Discovery because we know they can say the F word on Mars. I don't know if they can say motherfucker, but they can say fucker on Star Trek Discovery. So this might be in our future. So then I wrote down the Syllogistic Squadron. I don't know about that. I don't think I would join that group. That sounds kind of nerdy. I've got Modus Explodens. But the simpler version of that, which I think is the correct group, and the group that I would join, is Modus Violence.
Yes, that's the one. We found it. We found the one.
I want to like see Michael Burnham like go embedded inside the logic extremists or something. That would be awesome. I want to see their debates. I want to see their planning strategy sessions. I want to see them like sitting around and being like, what would be the most logical way for us to, take over the entire Federation via a coup? I wonder if they're working with Section 31. That would be cool.
That would be cool. That would be interesting. I hope the logic extremists Modus exploded. I hope they become the primary villain for this season.
I hope they become the primary heroes.
This is terrifying. Something profoundly inhuman has been activated within you. It's almost like
maybe that's where this is going. It's like Bach with his connection to emotion and humanity via his child versus the childless hordes of Section 31 and the logic extremists. And somehow faith and science and religion is going to get thrown in the mix in there too. It's going to be an interesting season.
It's definitely going to be an interesting season. I mean, like, so the other thing is, can compassion, and here's really pointed, I mean, I didn't unpack this at all when I was watching it, but can true compassion be of necessity diverted into cruelty? Like, can true compassion be expressed as cruelty? Because clearly that's what happened between Burnham and Spock. Like, she loves him so much that she's got to push him away somehow. Of course, I don't think that's legitimate. I think that's unreasonable to assume that the only option is to be cruel. And I think her choice of that, what is it? On Doug, the father used to say, show me someone who has chosen violence, and I'll show you someone who has chosen not to think things through as well as we can. Like the violence isn't necessary. As fun and beautiful as it was in this episode, from Section 31 and between the Klingons and Voq and L'Rell, like, it's, of course, that's a great indication if we want Quentin Tarantino to do the next Kelvin timeline movies. The precedent has been set. Yeah, there's, refer to me as mother. Wasn't that awesomely horrific?
That was good.
That was so like, and I, when they first said it, I was like, Klingon Mahta Jach. Like now they are sympathetic. Now they are interesting. I wish we had more of the push in the direction of making a way of life that is obsessed with honor and war and violence empathetic. Like we have it at this point. It's interesting enough for us to want more, and I certainly have that. But it would be really cool to have more. I'm okay with actually a full episode if you wanted to like really deeply, darkly portray the Klingons and have it be sympathetic somehow. Like this is just how they live. Like, have you heard of the Yanomamo tribe?
Yeah, Yanomami, the violent people.
Yeah. Oh, is that what the tribe name means?
No, that's just
your name
book
for them.
that the anthropologist wrote, Napoleon Champignon, wrote about the Yanomami that introduced them to the world.
Yeah, and apparently
violent people.
Part of what you have to do in order to become a full-fledged member of the tribe, at least as a male, is to kill someone, right?
Yeah, they're extraordinarily violent.
Yeah, so it would be very interesting to me if they portrayed the Klingons, if they used the Klingons as a way to sympathetically portray that type of culture. Like it is one of the great points of human nature that's very difficult to reconcile with our whole emphasis on compassion and empathy, really, is the fact that is there an innate tendency in humanity to be violent and towards aggression? Maybe. And what do we do with that? And how does that work? And maybe the Klingons are just a systematized articulation of and expression of the violent and aggressive tendencies within us that accept them and that utilize them and that leverage them, right?
Instead of seeing them as something to be overcome, they embrace them and say, no, this is good, and we're going to go in this direction. And that's what I was hoping for with T'Kuvma at the beginning of Discovery. I thought that T'Kuvma was going to be like this forceful, inspiring figure who really argued for that way of life. And then he got killed. He got wrecked. But, yeah, that's the promise of the Klingons for me. And that actually, there are, I think, Next Generation episodes that sort of have echoes of that. Like, for example, in Redemption Part 2, when Gowron is talking about how Worf is engaged in a battle that's very dangerous, he looks into the view screen with these crazy eyes and he says, I hope he dies well. And you can tell that for Gowron, that's like a good thing. Like, you want to die well. That's a wonderful thing. And that it sort of sends chills down my spine when I think about it, because it's such an alien idea, an alien way to live. And we've had echoes of it, and I'm really hoping Discovery goes deeper. What's going on with the Klingons?
Yeah, T'Kuvma was mentioned.
Yep.
So, I mean, he may be dead, but he's not gone. So,
of course, they're going to have to get hit with the augment virus pretty soon.
What's that?
The Klingons are going to have to get hit with the augment virus pretty soon for stuff to line up.
Well, a sufficient number of them to make or at least, the augments have to make an appearance at some point. And they have to gain supremacy, because when we start seeing D7s in the original series, like the one that was shown here, they're always captained by people with the augment virus. So those people have to get prominent at some point. Yeah. So the Section 31 ship was beautiful, by the way. Thought it was great, inside and out.
Yeah.
I feel like L'Rell has an absurd number of nostrils.
Yeah, how come the Klingons have 4 nostrils? And it looks like those extra nostrils don't go all the way in. Maybe they're decoy nostrils. Insects have decoy fake eyes.
That's awesome. Incidentally, that one Klingon's mustache, where it was like two pieces of hair emerging from different sides of his face, I thought that was awesome. I thought the Klingon sets were fucking badass looking. I like to believe that in the Next Generation, when they did those Klingon High Council meetings where Picard was present, I think that was because, or the one in Enterprise where Archer is present, I think those will be like conceits for the humans, and this is how the Klingons actually always meet by themselves.
That was like the guest antechamber.
Yeah, the guest antechamber, because this is like a badass cave and everything's on fire and like.
No, that's like the Klingons. I really like this idea that you came up with of the Klingons as like this alternate, like the Federation is extrapolating humans along the dimension of our empathy and our curiosity, basically. That's one way we can go. You know, we also have a tendency to violence and honor and that kind of stuff. The Klingons are a different extrapolation. What's a different way we can go?
Yeah, rather than just assuming that violence is bad or wrong or something.
Yeah.
Like, what would it be like if we assumed that it was part of who we are and that we just need to manage it and express it carefully?
I mean, let's do a like psychological analysis of the Klingons. They don't seem to be psychologically ill. They don't seem to like have a bunch of rackets. They're not like sick. They don't appear to be like self-hating. They're having a good time. They probably find their lives to be extraordinarily meaningful.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like, if they are there doing what they do and being fulfilled by this. And now this is key because we're talking about this, we're distinguishing this in the face of a culture that is in chaos and in transition, right? So before it was just rival warring houses, and now it's like this monolithic, organized, Klingons together, patriotic assemblage. And like, the real question is how, and this I think would be interesting to have an answer to throughout the rest of the season, is if the aggressive tendencies within the Klingons find their highest expression as war pointed outwards, which is what T'Kuvma wanted originally, was the Klingon Federation War, then where do they get their kicks other than subterfuge and political intrigue in expressing those aggressive, violent tendencies? Like how do the Klingons get to remain Klingon in the rest of the show?
I mean, it looks like from Next Generation, the remaining Klingon thing is something they're still kind of struggling with. Like in the first season in Next Generation, there are these episodes where the Klingons appear to be sort of chafing under the yoke of being in an alliance with the Federation. They seem to be unhappy with it because it's peaceful. They don't want peace.
Yeah, they're just kind of like generally grumpy. And at the slightest drop of a hat, they go to war on Deep Space Nine. Remember Way of the Warrior? Okay, it wasn't the slightest drop of a hat. There was legitimate like political machinations and reasoning behind that.
There were, but the point is that they were glad to go to war and they wanted to, and that was how they found their self-expression. And
interestingly, though, they did not shave their heads, and that's the writer's story for why the Klingons in Season 1 all had shaved heads. Like, is that they shaved their heads in time of war, and maybe it's fallen out of practice by the 24th century.
There's 100 years in between, man. We don't dress and wear hair like we did 100 years ago.
That's true. That's true. Eminently. So, go ahead.
No, it's not worth repeating.
Okay, so the way that L'Rell respects Tyler enough to withdraw when he's still dealing with what he's dealing with, like the experience of having been violated, like that was really cool. I thought the light through the windows in this episode was beautiful and elegant, and this Spock teasing is really just kind of a new hobby of the writers. Like, they're just like, how much can we tease? Not only can we tease Spock, but can we tease frickin' Sarek as well? Like Burnham thought it was going to be Sarek, and then it wasn't. Like, okay.
I really feel like Spock was almost the main character of this
really?
episode. I feel like everything was revolving around him, and everything except the Vok L'Rell stuff. There was a bit of a sort of parallel story going there.
Oh yeah, it definitely was. I mean, except for like the Tilly stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's actually 3 parallel stories, but one of them, the main character, is Spock.
And I didn't see this until just now. Burnham and Tilly are both dealing with shame, and it is in the overcoming of their shame, however incomplete it is for Burnham, in speaking the truth of what happened or what's going on, that actually begins to free and liberate both them and make the situation better. Like, it's and I like that they followed up the thing from the Spore thing. I like that maybe we're going to get to see more of this spherical alien parasite thing. And I'm glad we don't have to listen to the Jamaican accent anymore. That woman, she was meant to come off as kind of annoying, I think.
Yeah.
We didn't get enough
time. Sort of disengaged.
What's
it's
that?
Like this thing it's like a brain parasite that hadn't quite figured out how to present itself in a pleasing way, and so it's jarring because it doesn't quite interface well with her brain.
It was Richard, you're going to love this. It was a user experience problem.
Exactly.
The code wasn't written very well. Yeah. So, the interweaving between science and religion, however slight, like in the Red Angel, is really interesting. Amanda says Spock said that the Red Angel was real, and ostensibly they thought that it was like an appearance. It was not a real thing when when he was a child. And now we know that it was real. And it skirts this boundary between, like, what is a religious phenomenon and what is a strictly speaking science phenomenon. And the writers really broke that boundary with this whole Asimov's third law thing. Any sufficiently advanced, like the direction the next gen goes is, oh, that's just an alien, and so it's not a god. The direction that this goes is, no, actually, any sufficiently advanced extraterrestrial intelligence is indistinguishable from God, and basically people are legitimate in having that kind of a response. Worship, affiliation, appreciation, servitude, like less of the ethical like they shouldn't, and more of the like they're going to do this, more of an observation. And I think that's really cool. Like, it ties back into this whole reversion against the atheistic kind of scientific exploration and philosophical curiosity of Next Gen. Like Next Gen and Star Trek in general has definitely been too willing to conclude that anything theistic or anything religious is probably bunk, except for in Deep Space Nine. In Deep Space Nine, we get some really cool play around that. And I guess you could say this is similar play. It's been a year since I've seen Deep Space Nine, so like I don't have it on tap as much as I have like Voyager or whatever. But yeah, what did you think about all that?
I continue to appreciate the more nuanced approach to religion and science in this. What it isn't is what I think Next Generation sometimes lapsed into was scientism, which is like science as a religion, like Michael Byrne says, what is my religion is science? Where it's what they mean by that is not actual science in the sense of like empirical discovery of the universe. What they mean is like what we currently know about science, and like atoms and quantum effects and galaxies, the things that we currently think about in science. That's actually the stuff that they believe in religiously. That's scientism. And it really seems like the authors of this show have thought more deeply about it. I don't know how much this episode added beyond the last episode on that stuff. Like, there's the fact that Spock saw the angel, and that's interesting. That suggests the angel has some kind of psychic or psychological manifestation ability. Like, maybe this is an alien that exists maybe in something like the Spore network, such that it appears to people mentally in images, but maybe could not be detected with a video camera or something. I mean, we know that there are psychic abilities in Star Trek, because remember from Where No Man Has Gone Before, there was Gary Mitchell. He had an Esper rating, implying that everyone undergoes Esper testing, and everyone gets tested to see how much, extrasensory perception they have. So that's
actually really interesting.
I also feel like, if you experience something and people consistently experience the same thing, it's science at that point, man. It's an empirical phenomenon, man.
Well, that's part of the thing is,
yeah,
I can point to, and this is changing for sure, but mystical experiences like Satori, Samadhi, Kencho, people keep experiencing this. And it hasn't maybe quite made it to mainstream science. It's on its way, but so religious mystical experience, for example. Now, did you think it was cool that Ash Tyler had a Tribble ringtone?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it was there. It was a Tribble ringtone. It was real.
That's funny. He's rejecting his Klingon-ness there.
Well, she might be. She might be making a joke. And I guess, yeah. And then the aliens on the bridge during Tilly's meltdown, you remember the ones that...
yeah, with those horrific heads. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's what... Just for our listeners' understanding, that is actually a very accurate depiction of Richard, the one on the left, right? Am I right?
That's right.
Okay, yeah. They were also completely indistinct.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I mean, there really were no aliens on board except Spock in the original series. And I think the idea that the Federation even is a multicultural assemblage where everyone is mixed together is basically a 90s, 80s invention.
Yeah, it's a next-gen thing.
Got retcons. That's okay. Maybe maybe the Enterprise was an attempt at more racial homogeneity on board the ship.
Maybe the Enterprise was covertly filled with Nazis.
I think that's plausible. I think we've pretty much deduced that.
I really hope it's not true, but okay. So, what's your guess for what Burnham did to Spock?
I honestly have no idea. Let's see.
I'm pretty sure what happened is he was taking a shower and she flushed the toilet so it got cold.
That is a pretty shocking experience. No, seriously, it must have something to do with emotional vulnerability. Like maybe she made him feel something he was afraid of in himself.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
maybe she had some like real talk with him and he felt some stirrings of affection for her. Sisterly affection. Although not necessarily, they are step siblings. And he couldn't handle it.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm seeing is she had a strong influence on him, and of course they're going to leave it out for now. However, I like to believe, we've seen them interact, right? We've seen them interact in the trailer. So they reconcile. A real interesting question about her impact on him and his lack of empathy, so to speak, is like, why does he not reconcile with his father ultimately? Why do we see him and her reconcile and possibly him reconnect with Amanda, but not his father, given... And maybe that wound is just too deep. Maybe she actually tells him what we learned about Sarek's choice last season and maybe that just pushes him even further. But, yeah, that would be kind of sad. It would be kind of disturbing, alas. So here was my last quote for the episode. It is only as an aesthetic phenomenon that existence and the world are eternally justified. Can you tell me who that's from?
It is only as an aesthetic phenomenon. Someone I disagree with.
Oh, yes, clearly, of course you disagree with it. It's Nietzsche from Birth of Tragedy.
Yeah, I was going to guess Nietzsche or, what's the guy's name? Hegel.
Oh, yeah. It definitely sounds like it could have been Hegel. You're right. So, yeah, that for some reason that quote occurred to me in connection with this episode. I'm really not sure why anymore. I don't remember. Maybe it was because it was just so good. Maybe in a moment of pure hallucinatory madness, I felt like this episode justifies existence and the world.
That would be pretty impressive.
That would be like a great accomplishment.
I think that's a standard artists should hold themselves to. If you don't produce something which is so beautiful that it justifies the existence of the entire universe and all the suffering in it, then you've failed. I think that should be the standard that artists hold themselves to.
That's a pretty tall order, man. I don't.
Yeah, well, tall orders produce tall results.
And on that note, I found myself looking on Amazon to figure out where to buy one of those floating murder bots, but apparently...
are they there? You might want to look on Alibaba.
Yeah, the dark web, right? We can actually probably find something like that.
No, Alibaba is just the Chinese version of Amazon. Yeah, you could look on the dark web. Dream Market, that's what you'd want to look for.
I actually don't want to look there, Richard.
Oh. Okay.
I don't think it's good. I don't think we need a flying murder bot.
The Modus Exploded Society could make use of one.
The what?
The Modus Exploded Society.
Oh, I thought, what was that last one? Maybe they go by both. Maybe they go by Modus Exploded.
Modus Violence?
Yeah, Modus Violence in Russia does not work. Because it's too English. It's too
Yeah.
It's like an indie. It's like a punk rock band.
Explodens works because it's Latin.
Yeah, it's an actual word, isn't it? Exploded? Exploded.
It's a word in Latin.
Like legit. You didn't just make a gerundive out of explode, did you?
It's it's explodare or explodere. Do you remember? What is it in?
It would be explodo.
Yeah.
Well,
that's not informative. We need a third person, singular, present, indicative.
Explodo. It means from X.
Is it explodat or explodet?
And flaudo. Explaudo, which means I clap or I applaud. The original verb. Oh, this is interesting. The original verb meant I eject, as in to drive an actor off a stage by clapping or booing.
Nice.
Yeah, this fits right in, man, with your people. I'm looking for. Actually, it would be modus explosus would be the proper. Well, I don't know. Oh no, there is an explodens. Someone thankfully has.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's an explodens. It's some gerund or something, right?
Yeah, it's a gerund. Somebody has. Can you believe that there's someone on Wiktionary whose only job it is to conjugate all of the forms of each Latin verb?
That person is probably a logic extremist. That person is in the prime demographic to join this movement.
We should create, I don't know, a homepage with propaganda.
They collect names and send them to the FBI.
We just think of the taglines have you recently been feeling emotionally driven in a difficult way? Would you prefer to be blowing things up, but logically?
Imagine how upset the writers of Star Trek Discovery would be if an actual logic extremist faction emerged.
Oh no!
Actually committed acts of terrorism.
And it's all
imagine how aghast the writers would be.
Yeah. That would be terrible, actually. It would be really terrible. So, last thing to orbit real quick is Section 31, man. It's apparently going to be more prominent. This is the most interactions between members of Section 31 that we've ever seen. Usually they're one shadowy person in the background who shows up, is gnomic, and then disappears. And we're on a ship. We're now with Ash Tyler on a ship. And by the way, I like what they did with the kid. I like that they put the kid on Boreth, and it's going to be a monk, and that was sweet. And wise and clever. What a clever stratagem she used. I appreciated that.
I think that's what happened in medieval settings when you had an heir that is secreted away and everyone thinks he's dead. I think they would usually make him a monk.
Exactly. Yeah, So Section 31, do you think seeing more of them is a good idea or a bad idea? I mean, this is a great fun idea.
I think it's a good idea. Look, why not? Let's try all the stuff and see what makes good and meaningful television. There is this conflict because Star Trek always has this idealistic history. I don't know what to say about that. That can coexist with the fact that the Federation has a faction, which many people I think are going to end up rooting for, which is not really so idealistic.
Yeah,
maybe Star Trek fandom is going to split into pro-Section 31 and anti-Section 31 camps. That's okay. You can have split fandoms.
I think, given the surprise with which Archer and later Cisco discover Section 31, that it's been given a little bit too much prominence here. I guess these people are special because they're on this special ship, and Ash Tyler is who he is. He says he's heard about black badges before, but he's never seen one. And this is the answer, by the way, to what those black badges were a year and a half ago. Standing outside that one room on Discovery. So Discovery itself has been party to Section 31 interacting. I'm curious. I really want them to fully confirm my theory about control. Of course, all they have to do, really, in order to confirm that or to be consonant with it, is to never show us a person who heads up Section 31.
Yep.
Like,
keeps it mysterious.
Yeah. And maybe the series, well, no, they're going to do something totally different with the series. They're not going to just wholesale take David Mack's idea, but I highly recommend that book. Maybe we'll put a link to it in the description of this video. I think that would be worth it. But, yeah, all right, final thoughts, man. What's your vote?
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. What was it missing?
I feel like this was kind of like a linker episode.
What?
There's 3 plot threads. They don't make a lot of contact. I feel like it's like this is connective tissue, very good connective tissue.
Oh, yeah.
Between the 2 main courses, this is like some little linker.
There's more to come, and it will be better, is my hope and thought. And on that note, this has been The Adventures of the Murderbot.